Okay, so you guys have sent over like this really fascinating collection of articles and reports and stuff, all about crypto and Web3 gaming, right?
Yeah, looks like a lot of interesting developments recently.
It is. So, what we're going to try and do today is sift through all of it. I mean, we've got a state senator doing a complete 180 on Bitcoin. We've got different opinions coming out of Washington. We've got institutional investors, the big players making moves in crypto. And of course, there's the whole Web3 gaming scene, which is, well, a whole world in itself,
It
honestly.
really is.
We'll try to break down what it all means. So, if you're ready to have your mind blown a little bit, stick with us.
There are definitely some aha moments in this batch of info, for sure.
All right, let's kick things off in Minnesota, shall we? State Senator Jeremy Miller. Now, I don't know if you remember, but he wasn't exactly a crypto fan before.
Right.
But now he's leading the charge with this thing called the Minnesota Bitcoin Act. I mean, what happened? What's driving this sudden change of heart? And what's in this act anyway?
It's kind of a fascinating turnaround. It seems like Senator Miller has really, deeply dived into understanding crypto and has had, a real shift in his perspective. As for the Minnesota Bitcoin Act itself, it's pretty bold.
Okay.
It proposes letting the State Board of Investment actually put some state funds into Bitcoin, maybe even other cryptocurrencies. And get this, it wants to give state employees the option to include crypto in their retirement plans.
Wow.
And it even suggests allowing people to pay state taxes and fees using Bitcoin.
So, I mean, they're going all in on this.
Looks like it.
It's pretty big, right? I mean, Minnesota really embracing Bitcoin like this. What are the big implications here?
I think the biggest thing is that it could really legitimize crypto in the eyes of, the whole government system.
Yeah.
If a state is willing to integrate crypto into its financial operations at this level, that's a powerful message.
For sure.
Other states might start to see it as a viable option, and it could even influence how the federal government approaches crypto regulation.
That's a huge point. So we've got this potential state-level acceptance, but then we look at what's going on at the federal level in D.C., and it's almost like a completely opposite story.
It really is.
We have this group of lawmakers actually urging President Trump to, pump the brakes on any cryptocurrency stuff. I mean, that's a pretty big contrast to what's happening in Minnesota.
Definitely. I think this shows just how much debate there still is within the government about the role of crypto, how safe it is, all that.
Yeah.
These lawmakers, they're worried about the potential economic risks, like what it could do to the stability of the U.S. financial system.
It's interesting, though, isn't it? Because, on the one hand, you have these folks saying, whoa, hold on, this is dangerous. And on the other hand, you have a whole state potentially diving headfirst into it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating dynamic.
So for those of us trying to make sense of all this, what should we take away from this kind of push and pull at the federal level?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that the regulatory landscape for crypto in the U.S. is far from settled. These contrasting opinions, especially at such high levels of government, tell us that federal policy could still swing in a lot of different directions. And that's going to directly impact how the crypto industry operates and grows within the U.S. Whether we see stricter regulations or more relaxed ones, it's going to have a big impact on adoption and how quickly crypto becomes part of mainstream finance.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got these different vibes coming from different levels of government. But what about the big money, the institutional investors? Where are they putting their bets? That survey from Coinbase and EY Parthenon paints a pretty interesting picture, right?
It does. And the headline is clear. Institutional interest in crypto is growing.
Yeah.
I mean, a whopping 83% of the institutional investors surveyed say they plan to increase their crypto allocations in 2025.
Yeah.
That's a really strong indication of growing confidence in this space.
That's huge. 83%. I mean, that's not just a few people dipping their toes in the water.
Right, it's becoming mainstream.
And it's not just Bitcoin and Ether either, right?
That's another interesting point. Almost 75% of these institutions are already holding a variety of cryptocurrencies, not just the big two. So we're seeing a broadening of their investment strategies.
So they're diversifying their portfolios. Okay. So we know a lot of them are planning to increase their allocation, but we're talking about institutional investors here. These are the big players. What kind of figures are we actually talking about?
Well, many of these institutions are looking at allocating 5% or even more of their total portfolios to crypto. And when you think about the massive amounts of capital these firms manage, 5% translates to a significant inflow of money into the crypto market.
5%. Wow, that's not messing around. That's a serious commitment. I mean, this isn't some fringe thing anymore, is it? So for someone who wants to understand where finance is headed, why is this trend so important?
This growing institutional confidence suggests they're seeing the potential for strong returns from crypto, even considering the risks. And when all this institutional money starts flowing in, it could bring more stability and liquidity to the crypto market, which are often seen as challenges.
Yeah, for sure.
And as more traditional financial giants get involved, it could really accelerate the adoption of crypto into the mainstream financial system.
Definitely. This feels like a really important signal that the crypto market is maturing.
I think so too.
Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about something that's, well, a little different, but just as exciting. This partnership between the Ronin Network and Neo Tokyo in the Web3 gaming world.
Yeah, definitely an interesting development.
Now, for those of us who might not be totally up on all the latest lingo, could you maybe break down what the Ronin Network and Neo Tokyo are?
Sure. So the Ronin Network, think of it like a specialized blockchain built specifically for making crypto gaming faster, cheaper, more efficient. It's known for hosting some really popular games like Axie Infinity.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Now, Neo Tokyo is a bit different. It's more like a community, a really strong community of builders, investors, and gamers who are all super passionate about Web3 and all the possibilities it offers.
It's like a super engaged group of like early adopters, basically.
Exactly. They're deeply involved in building and shaping the future of decentralized technologies, kind of like a high-functioning DAO.
Got it. So it sounds like these two coming together could be pretty powerful.
Absolutely. I think it's a really strategic move.
So what's the main goal of this collaboration? What are they hoping to achieve?
The main idea is to bring Neo Tokyo's really active community more deeply into the Ronin gaming ecosystem. They want to make it easier for them to get involved in testing out new games on the Ronin platform, to do things like game streaming, to create content related to Ronin-based games. Basically, they want to tap into that enthusiasm and creativity.
It's kind of like a win-win, right?
Exactly. Ronin gets access to this amazing pool of talent and feedback, and Neo Tokyo's members get to be at the forefront of Web3 gaming development.
So what about the specific benefits for the folks in Neo Tokyo? What do they actually get out of this?
Well, there are a few key things. First, they'll get early access to new game projects launching on the Ronin network, so they'll be among the first to play and provide feedback.
Nice. I always like getting early access to stuff.
And then there's the potential for airdrops, which means they could receive in-game assets or even tokens for free, just by being part of the community.
Who doesn't love free stuff?
And finally, they'll have a much easier time applying for Ronin's ecosystem grant program, which helps fund promising new game projects. So if anyone in Neo Tokyo has an awesome game idea, they'll have a better chance of getting support.
That's a pretty sweet deal. So you've got these two groups, both really strong in their own ways, teaming up. What does this kind of partnership mean for the broader Web3 gaming scene?
I think it's a sign of how the space is maturing and becoming more collaborative. By combining their strengths, Ronin and Neo Tokyo can really accelerate the growth of blockchain gaming, bring more players in, attract more developers, and create a more vibrant ecosystem.
Yeah.
It also shows how important community is in this space. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people who are passionate about building and playing these games.
For sure. And it's exciting to think about what kind of amazing games might come out of this collaboration.
Definitely.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of actually making these Web3 games. Alexander Larson, the co-founder of Sky Mavis, the company behind the mega hit Axie Infinity, has been pretty open about the challenges involved.
Right. And his perspective is super valuable, given how successful Axie Infinity has been.
Yeah, exactly. So what are some of the big hurdles he's been talking about?
The main thing he emphasizes is that it's really tough to create a successful blockchain game because there are so many different things you have to get right at the same time. You need top-notch graphics, gameplay that keeps people hooked, and a solid crypto economic system that makes sense and is sustainable. And all these pieces have to work together seamlessly.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. And that's a big part of why it's so hard to replicate the success of a game like Axie Infinity, even though it's been such a phenomenon.
I remember him saying that just copying the Axie Infinity model isn't really the answer. Why is that?
Well, Axie Infinity had this really specific combination of game mechanics and a blockchain-based economy that worked incredibly well for that particular game.
Okay.
But those elements were all very carefully designed to fit together in a specific way. It's not like you can just take that same formula and plop it into a different game and expect the same results.
Got it.
And the interaction between the gameplay and the blockchain aspects of the game is complex. It really depends on how all the pieces are designed to work together. It's not just about slapping on some crypto features onto a regular game.
It's way more involved than that.
Right. It often requires a completely different approach to game design.
So it's about thinking about the game from the ground up with both the traditional gaming elements and the blockchain elements in mind.
Exactly. And that's one of the big things that makes developing Web3 games so challenging, but also so potentially rewarding.
It sounds like a really exciting, but definitely a demanding space to be working in.
It is.
And it's really insightful to hear from someone like Alexander Larson, who's actually been in the trenches and built a wildly successful game. So for developers or investors who are looking at this space, what are the big lessons here?
I think the key takeaway is that building successful Web3 games requires a deep understanding of both traditional game design and blockchain technology. You can't just be good at one or the other. You need both. And you have to be able to create an in-game economy that actually works, that makes sense for players, and keeps them engaged.
Right.
It's complex, but that complexity is also what makes it so interesting and potentially groundbreaking.
This has been like a seriously mind-expanding look at what's happening in crypto and Web3 gaming. We've covered everything from a state senator's surprising support for Bitcoin to the growing presence of institutional investors.
Right.
We've looked at this really interesting partnership in the Web3 gaming space, and we've gotten some really valuable insights into the challenges of building successful blockchain games.
Absolutely. It's a snapshot of a rapidly evolving landscape.
And it leaves us with a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, here's something I want you to ponder. We talk about all this institutional money flowing into crypto, right? Now, think about how that might actually influence those regulatory debates we discussed earlier, both at the state and federal levels. Could this influx of capitals sway lawmakers one way or the other when it comes to crypto policy? And in turn, how might those shifts in the financial and regulatory landscape impact the future of Web3 gaming and other decentralized applications? What kind of connections and developments do you see emerging from all these interconnected trends? It's a lot to consider, but that's what makes this space so fascinating.
It definitely is.
Keep those brains buzzing. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.